Hello, my name is Michelle Gleason. I'm the current chair of the Finance Council here at St. Basil's. Before I get started in my presentation, I'd like to take a moment and thank Ed Loziak, the man behind the camera, who always graciously gives of his time to do these video tapings. Without him, this would be impossible. Slide 2 is the table of contents that I'll be covering today. I will be making references to the slide numbers as place markers so that it's easier for you to follow along in case you're looking at the deck and listening to the video presentation. Slide 3 is the current members of the Finance Council. St. Basil's is very fortunate to have such a committed group of individuals who volunteer on the council. They bring a depth and breadth of skills and knowledge from their professional backgrounds, be they in the fields of business, public and private sector management, engineering, legal, and finance. To the members of the Finance Council, on behalf of St. Basil's parishioners, I'd like to thank you very much for your commitment and dedication to this ministry. I'd also like to take a moment and to thank both Puspa and Chantal, who are the two bookkeepers in the parish that have been doing this work on a volunteer basis for just under 2 years now. Their commitment to the parish is very much appreciated. Slide 4 is on governance. Our role in the Finance Council is to work with the pastor and to provide financial oversight and advice on the financial operations of the parish. The protocols under which we operate are the financial administration documents from the Archdiocese. They have been recently updated. The last one was effective 2011, and in June 2025, it was replaced by the Financial Management of Parish Operations. At each of our Finance Council meetings on a monthly basis, for your information, we review a selection of topics from these protocols to ensure that the parish is compliant. And by year end, we have reviewed each of the chapters in this policy document at least once on an annual basis. One of the protocols is year-end financial reporting. We, the Finance Council, must submit our year-end financial statements to the Archdiocese, along with the new budget for the upcoming year, and we must also present this information to you, the parishioners. We'll be taking a slightly different approach this year to the financial presentation. We'll be spending a shorter time in providing you with summary financial information, and then we will attach to this video presentation detailed financial reports on capital, operating, and the parish's designated funds. We wanted to spend a little time addressing some questions that parishioners have asked Finance Council members. So on slide 5 is the summary of the operating and capital business line information for the parish. From an operating perspective, the parish's total income from all sources of revenues this year was just over $374,000. That was $14,000 higher than what we had budgeted. The parish operating expenses this year totaled $376,000, and that was $16,000 higher than what we had budgeted. But fortunately, it resulted in only a very small operating deficit of just a little over $2,000. And that's thanks to the increase in various sources of revenues. On the capital side, the combined building fund and under one roof donations totaled $182,600. The expenses in capital were approximately $141,000, which resulted in a $41,000 surplus. These monies will be carried over into 2026 and used for under one roof planned expenditures. Thank you to all you parishioners at St. Basil's for your generous and continuous donations. Slide 6 are 2 pie charts. They highlight for you the sources and uses of funds in the parish by input factor. On the revenue pie chart, you'll see that $279,000, or almost 75% of the parish's operating revenues, are funded by the generous donations of the parishioners of St. Basil's. Thank you very much for your continued and ongoing support. It is essential for the sustainability of our parish. On the operating pie chart, this one excludes any capital or under one roof expenses. The two largest expenditure categories you will notice are payroll and rectory and church maintenance expenses. They represent just over 60% of our total expenses. Further details and breakdown of these revenues and expenses can be found in the attached reports. Slide 7 is our 2026 budget information. Listed here shows the comparison of the 2026 budget to the 2025 budget. In being transparent and as part of the Archdiocese financial protocols, the Finance Council must present to the parish the approved New Year budget on an annual basis. The proposed budget must take into consideration the parish's pastoral priorities, and it must then be examined by the Pastoral Council to ensure that it aligns with the pastoral plans of the church prior to it being approved by the pastor. Once approved by the pastor, the budget is submitted along with our year-end financial reports to the Archdiocese. The Finance Council has met all of these requirements. Slide 8. Here's where we change things up a little bit. We wanted to take a few minutes and share with you a few questions and answers or situations that some parishioners have raised with some of our Finance Council members. In the interest of time, I'll only be able to give an overview of these topics. So let's tackle the question of, are we rich or are we poor? I invite for your consideration that we need to look at this from two perspectives. First, the day-to-day operations of the parish, both revenues and expenses. And second, what the parish has in its equity account. In other words, what it has in the monies that it has on account at the Archdiocese. And I'd like to use the analogy of our own personal finances, something that we can all relate to. If we look at the operating income and expenses as our regular household checkings account, and if we look at the equity of the parish, something like the long-term investments that people might have in GICs, bonds, or shares. That'll help clarify this a bit better. So the next few slides are intended to show you the parish's trends from both of these perspectives. Over the last several years, you can see from the graph that the operating revenues, which is the blue bar, have not been keeping pace with our cost of operations, the orange bar. If we extend this graph to pre-COVID years, the parish was operating at a deficit position, and we have been for several years. There was some COVID relief funding that took place in 2021, 2022. However, from 2023 onward and pre-COVID, the parish continues to operate in a deficit position. That's the gray bar. In 2025 was the smallest operating deficit we have incurred in several years, thanks to the focused effort on increasing our revenues. If we translate that into our household checking analogy, this essentially means that we don't have enough money in our day-to-day checkings account to cover the operations of the parish. It means that we have to keep dipping into our long-term savings account to cover the annual cost of operations. Slide 10 is the equity, the net worth of St. Basil's. And let me start by saying that, thanks to parishioners' continued generosity and support over the past many years, St. Basil's is blessed with having a very healthy equity account. At the end of 2025, our equity account totaled just over $553,000. That's the gray bar on the graph. This is split approximately $372,000 for specified purpose needs, the blue bar, and the balance, approximately $180,000, is our general purpose equity. That's the orange bar on the graph. Following the same banking analogy, That means that $180,000 of our monies on account we have access to cover any operating deficits we may incur. So, as part of the answer to the question, are we rich or are we poor? The answer is we are not poor. We are blessed and we do have money in the bank, approximately $180,000 in general purpose equity. However, that amount in our reserves has been continuously decreasing. You can see in this graph that in the last 5 years, we have been dipping into our reserves to the tune of approximately $100,000. This is not a sustainable method of operation, nor is it a solid financial management approach for the parish. This next slide, 11, gives you a representation of the annual interest that is earned by St. Basil's for the monies held on account. It has also been declining, and you can see that in the line graph. From 2023 to 2025, the interest earned has decreased by 17%. As we dip into our long-term savings, the result is we earn less interest income, which then negatively impacts the parish financial operations. Less interest income means either we have to make up the gap with other sources of revenue, or this income shortfall contributes to our annual operating deficit. Slide 12, so what's next? Although the answer is no, we are not poor, I offer for your consideration that there's an important follow-on question, that is, how can we curb this deficit trend? There are two key drivers, revenues and expenses. It is recognized and very much appreciated that St. Basil's parishioners are very generous and giving. However, the sustainability cannot solely rely on the parishioners' Sunday donations. We collectively need to look at various other sources of alternatives for increasing our revenues. For example, remembering St. Basil's in your estate planning, or investigating and considering the tax benefits of donating various securities to the parish, or expanding our fundraising and parish events. The diversification of various revenue sources is important. We have, for example, cell tower from Videotron that they rent space on our bell tower. We rent out the east parking lot in the summer to a children's cycling school. We have also applied for a few grants, and I'm very happy to say that we found out just this week that we have received a $10,000 grant from the Export Foundation in Southern Ontario. From an expenditure perspective, there are certain costs that are fixed and we cannot change. However, we as a parish need to continue to find ways of cost containment. A few examples of what we've done so far are, we don't plow the east parking lot for the last several years. That, for your information, saves approximately $4,500 a year. Did you know that it cost almost $11,000 a year to plow and salt the west parking lot? We have recently reduced the office hours from 5 days to 4 per week, and we're exploring options of reducing telecommunications cost. Finance Council members are receptive to any innovative revenue or cost containment suggestion anyone has. Please don't be shy in sharing any ideas you have. So now let's tackle the last two questions to be covered. 1, how are special donations tracked, be they diocesan or parish funded donations? First, it's important to stress that funds contributed for specific purposes are used exclusively for those purposes. They are not used to fund parish operations. Separate accounting is kept for both the diocesan and parish designated expenses and revenues. This information is listed separately in our annual financial statements, and you can see these details reported in the financial reports posted on the parish website. And the last question was, do we receive money from the Archdiocese or do we pay taxes? The answer to that question is yes to both. First, we receive interest income on all of the monies that are held on account at the Archdiocese. Parishes are required to deposit all of their surplus funds with the diocese. and they're held in what is called a loan fund account. Semi-annually, we receive interest payments that are deposited into the St. Basil's bank account. In 2025, the interest earned from monies on account was just over $11,000. Secondly, yes, we do pay diocesan taxes. All parishes are required to pay diocesan taxes. And the amount owed is generally based on the previous year's operating revenues, excluding any designated monies or any tax-exempted sources of funds. So a few examples of those exclusions are all of the special donations, the refugee fund, share lent, charitable donations, etc., and any bequests that someone puts in their will. The diocesan tax rate is usually around 13%. And for 2026, our forecasted current estimated taxes are approximately $50,000. I know I went quickly through all of this material. If anybody has any specific questions or comments or wants future additional information, please don't be shy to reach out to any Finance Council member. It would be our pleasure to provide you more information. The last few slides are updates on the parish's multi-year Under One Roof initiative, slides 14 to 16. Slide 14 is about the campaign and what happened in 2025. It was launched in 2025. Its target was to raise $450,000 over 3 years and to also increase by approximately 20% the collections to help cover operating deficits. We have to look at this initiative from two perspectives. First, the fundraising campaign component, and second, the capital and building fund component. For your information, for the duration of this fundraising campaign, both the building fund envelopes and any Under One Roof donations are being combined together. So the status from the fundraising component in 2025, we did meet our targets of increasing the collections by 20%. Thank you very much. There was approximately 58 households that pledged either single or multiple year pledges. The pledged amounts for 2025 only were $82,000. And there were many parishioners that made donations to Under One Roof without a pledge commitment. The actual total donations in the first year were just under $183,000. This represents 45% of the target for the 3 years. Thank you very much. From the building fund perspective, the $182,000 of capital received, we spent about $141,000. The balance will be carried over to use in 2026. Listed here is just a few of the key building expenses that were incurred in 2025. First, we did extensive electrical work in both the church and the rectory. There was an installation of new and bigger capacity electrical panels. There was trenching. You might have remembered seeing the digging up between the church to the electrical pole in the church parking lot. There was connectivity of all of those new cables to these new electrical boxes. There was a lot of rewiring of old electrical wiring and bringing it up to code. There was significant work done on improving lighting. We replaced all light bulbs with LEDs. Emergency signage was updated to code, and the long-awaited installation of parking lot and canopy lighting was done. Secondly, we finally resolved the long-standing issue of water penetration in the rectory basement. In the fall, you may have noticed some regrading and landscaping work around the rectory grounds, as well as there was extensive repairs done to cracks in the basement and tunnel halls. This year was focused on taking care of some of the important essential infrastructure requirements. In 2026, from a fundraising perspective, it's critical to continue the pledge campaign. Pledges are essential because they allow the parish to plan and carry out our expenditures and the necessary maintenance and repairs to our beloved church with confidence that funds are available when needed. We're very grateful to St. Basil's parishioners for your current donations. However, we can't let down our guard. We still have over 50% of funds of our target that remain to be raised, and that works out to just about $270,000 over the next 2 years. From a building and a capital perspective, let me first clearly state that Finance Council and Building Premises Committee decided when the launch of this campaign took place that we would not incur significant capital expenditures only when sufficient funds to cover these expenses were raised. So the Under One Roof campaign, although it's called an Under One Roof, is more than just the repairs and replacing of the church roof. There are many infrastructure building requirements that need to be addressed. And as they say, nobody wants to be in a position of putting a new roof on a sinking ship. And so a few examples of some of the work that's planned in 2026 are replacing the hot water heater in the church rectory. We're permanently resolving the long-standing issue of the sanitary piping in the church and the rectory. I know it's not a sexy item, but it's definitely necessary. The completion of all the residual electrical work and the final ultimate connectivity of this electrical work to the telephone, to the electrical pole that's in the parking lot.
That is out.
We're also investigating best options for repairs of the church cement walkway entrances.
Always do that.
The last two slides, slides 17 and 18. In closing, first and foremost, thank you very much to the parishioners for your continued support and generosity, both in terms of regular collections and special donations. We have summarized on this last slide the key financial points that I have covered for your review. The last slide is, as they say, last but not least. Generosity is a biblical reality and remains a vital aspect of our spirituality. Being generous, we enrich ourselves and become better and more faithful Christians. Your prayers, your active involvement, your generous donations to St. Basil's will continue to have a profound impact on the sustainability and shared future of our beautiful parish community. Thank you very much for your time and attention.